Vanakkam. Welcome back to Keystone IAS Academy. Today's analysis covers 4 key articles from The Hindu on voting rights, UBI Universal Basic Income, surrogacy laws, and the nomination process reforms in elections. Let's understand each one in a simple and meaningful way. First, let's start with the center's clarification before the Supreme Court about the difference between the right to vote and the freedom of voting. The government said that the right to vote is not a fundamental right but a statutory right. As we all know that right to vote is a statutory right. It comes under the law called RPA Act 1951, Representation of People Act 1951. But once a voter enters the polling booth and casts their vote, that act of choosing becomes an expression of opinion. So it becomes part of our fundamental right to freedom of speech under Article 19(1)(a). So what government says? Right to vote is not a fundamental right. It actually a statutory right. Statutory right na ஒரு லாக்கு கீழே வருது. அது என்ன law? Representation of People Act 1951. So RPA 1951 கீழே right to voteங்கிறது ஒரு statutory right தான். பட் எப்போ நம்ம போய் vote பண்ணுறதுக்காக அந்த போலிங் பூத்துக்குள்ளே நாம் போகிறோமோ அந்த டைமில் நம்மளுடைய எக்ஸ்ப்ரெஷனை நம்மளுடைய ஒப்பீனியன் என்ன, யாருக்கு நம்ம ஓட் பண்ண போகிறோம் அப்படிங்கிற ஒப்பீனியனை நம்ம அங்கே எக்ஸ்ப்ரெஸ் பண்ணுறோம். அதனால தட்ஸ் வை இட் கம்ஸ் அண்டர் த ஃபண்டமெண்டல் ரைட். என்ன ஆர்டிகல்னா ஆர்டிகல் 19(1)(a) ஃப்ரீடம் ஆஃப் ஸ்பீச். ஸோ அப்படின்னு கவர்மெண்ட் இப்போ சொல்லுது சுப்ரீம் கோர்ட் முன்னாடி. ஸோ திஸ் டிபேட் came up because of uncontested elections. When the number of candidates equals the number of seats, there is no polling. ஸோ நம்பர் ஆஃப் சீட்ஸ் இவ்வளோ இருக்குது, நம்பர் ஆஃப் கேண்டிடேட்ஸும் இவ்வளோ இருக்கிறாங்க, ரெண்டுமே ஈக்குவலாக இருந்தால் அப்போ அங்கே போலிங்கே இல்லை. ஸோ அந்த டைமில் நம்மளோட ஃபண்டமெண்டல் ரைட், ஏன்னா நம்ம போய் ஓட் பண்ண மாட்டோம், ஸோ நம்மளுடைய ஃபண்டமெண்டல் ரைட் இருக்காது. ஸோ இந்த எலெக்ஷன்ஸ்னால தான் இந்த டிபேட் ஸ்டார்ட் ஆச்சு. ஸோ பெட்டிஷனர்ஸ் ஆர்கியூட் தட் even in such cases, people should have the right to express dissent by choosing the nota option, right? So the center replied that freedom of voting arises only when a poll is held. So if there is no election process, there is no question of exercising that freedom. This is what government says. This case raises a deeper question about democracy itself. Does the voter's right to express choice exist only during polling, or should it exist as a fundamental expression in all cases? This is a question here. This is the argument going on. This is not the editorial article. This comes in the front page news. So as it seems important, I gave the explanation here. So the outcome will have major implications for electoral rights and citizen participation in India. So you can go through the analysis of that news. Then coming to the practice question, the right to vote is a statutory right, but the freedom of voting is a facet of the fundamental right to freedom of expression. Discuss this distinction in the light of recent debates on uncontested elections and the nota options in India. Okay, so pass it, write the answer and post in our Telegram group. Now coming to the second article, redraw welfare architecture, place a UBI in the center. The article argues that India needs to redesign its welfare system by placing UBI at its core to address rising inequality, automation-led unemployment, and welfare inefficiencies, ensuring dignity, simplicity, and income security for all citizens. This comes under paper 2 and 3. So what the other argues, or what the article says, that as inequality grows and automation threatens job, India must rethink its welfare system. So a universal basic income, or UBI, means what is that? A small but regular and unconditional cash payment to every citizen. So there are no forms, no eligibility criteria. It is a regular and unconditional cash payment. Okay, so what is the idea? The idea is very simple. Every citizen deserves a minimum level of income security. Why? It ensures dignity, reduces bureaucratic leakage, and gives people freedom to make choices. So, studies in India, such as the Seva pilot in Madhya Pradesh, showed that when families received basic income, nutrition, education, and overall well being improved. So, international trials in Finland and Kenya found also the similar benefits. But implementing UBI in India has challenges. It could cost nearly 5% of GDP, and ensuring inclusion in remote areas is difficult. Still, the article suggests starting with the vulnerable groups like women, the elderly, or low income workers, and then expanding gradually. So, more than economics, UBI is also about reshaping the citizen state relationship, moving away from freebies and towards a rights based, transparent welfare system. It's a vision of dignity, stability, and inclusive growth. These are very important points regarding UBI. So, you can note it down and write in our practice questions. So, why does India need to redesign its welfare architecture around a universal basic income? Examine its potential benefits, challenges, and the way forward. Now let's look at the third article. The Supreme Court has agreed to examine whether banning married couples with a secondary infertility from using surrogacy to have a second child violates their reproductive rights, highlighting the need for a more inclusive and rights-based interpretation of India's Surrogacy Act 2021. A couple facing secondary infertility, meaning they had one child earlier but couldn't conceive again, so approached the Supreme Court to seek permission for surrogacy. Under India Surrogacy Regulation Act 2021, only childless couples can opt for surrogacy except when their existing child has a severe disability or illness. So the couple argued that this rule unfairly restricts their reproductive rights under Article 21, the right to privacy and personal liberty. The government, however, maintained that surrogacy cannot be seen as a fundamental right, but it involves because it involves another woman's body. The court hasn't given a final verdict yet, but has agreed to examine whether this restriction is reasonable. Okay, this is also comes from the article. The court is yet to give the final verdict. So the author says the intent of the law preventing commercial exploitation of surrogate mothers is valid, but banning genuine medical cases like secondary infertility seems unnecessarily harsh. A broader and compassionate interpretation could allow such couples to benefit from assisted reproductive technology without undermining ethics or regulation. The essence is very simple. Laws should protect dignity and prevent misuse, but they should not deny legitimate reproductive choices to deserving families. Okay, that's it. Here is the practice question. We can go through. Coming to the fourth article, why the nomination process needs reform. The article highlights the flaws in India's election nomination process under the RPA 1951, where technical errors often lead to rejection of valid candidates and calls for reforms to make it more democratic, transparent, and citizen friendly. It directly comes under again GS paper 2, that you all know, elections. So here the author explains. Here the author explains how our election nomination process often reject candidates on technical grounds, sometimes without a fair chance to correct errors also. For example, a candidate's form can be rejected because an oath was taken too early or too late, a signature was missing, a certificate was delayed, like that. These are not major violations, but they can destroy a valid candidacy. The returning officer or RO has wide discretionary powers to reject nominations, and there are no clear guidelines on what counts as substantial defect. So once rejected, the decision can't be challenged until after elections. Okay, this is a very important point. Once the nomination gets rejected, the decision can't be challenged until after elections, which makes it practically irreversible. The author suggests that ROs should act as facilitators, not gatekeepers. This is what the article says. If there's an error, the candidate should get a written notice and 48 hours to correct it. This is the practical solution the article is giving. The entire nomination process should move to a digital platform with auto verification, timestamps, and transparency dashboards. Other democracies already follow such citizen-friendly systems where the aim is to help candidates participate, not to filter them out. This is a very important point. Strengthening this stage of the electoral process will ensure that elections are fair, inclusive, and truly democratic. So, in summary, today's articles connect to the larger theme of democracy, rights, and justice. Here is your final practice question. Why does India's electoral nomination process need reform? Examine the problems with the current system of nomination scrutiny and suggest measures to make the process more democratic and citizen friendly. It's a very simple question. You can write the answer. So, and for you as UPSC aspirants, most of the topics today are linked to GS paper 2 and 3. So pause the video, think about today's practice question, try writing short answers daily. Do write answers every day and share them in a Telegram group. Your answers will be evaluated as soon as possible. Thank you for watching. Stay consistent, keep analyzing, and see you in the next session with tomorrow's Hindu analysis. Thank you.